I thought I was safe inside the life I built, until he said my name like a secret, and every lamp in my house turned into a siren I couldn't silence. On Maple Court, the curtains always looked pressed, the lawn edged like a blade, the porch swing whispering that we were fine even when we weren't, and I believed it because I wanted to more than I needed to breathe. My name is Clara Wynne, project manager by day, hostess by ritual, wife by habit, mother by muscle memory. And my marriage had become a list of maintenance tasks no calendar reminder could fix. Evan, my husband, was kind in the way a locked door is, reliable, sturdy, always there, but the key had gone missing, and neither of us wanted to ask who lost it first. Our son, Jonah, ran on momentum. Lectures, late night edits, a campus paper deadline that made him glow with a purpose I used to recognize inside myself. His best friend, Aidan Park, came with the hum of coffee and ideas, earnest and sharp, the type who rinsed his mug and asked how to help like it wasn't a favor but a value. It began as driftwood, small, stray things, Aidan's texts about meal prep, a forgotten notebook under the kitchen lamp, the way his questions weren't placeholders but keys. Why do you leave a light on in the foyer? Why does the rosemary live indoors? Who is this house protecting? There are days a single sentence changes the weather. You make a room feel like a steadier heartbeat, Aidan said after a study session, rinsing plates, voice steady with an attention I hadn't carried home in years. It's just staging, I deflected, as if my entire life hadn't been an open house for a buyer who stopped showing up. That night, Evan fell asleep with his laptop glow on his face like winter light, and I stared at our ceiling fan counting the blades as if math could stop a future. Spring unfurled like a dare, rain on brick, the smell of asphalt after, the rosemary insisting on living through a draft I never found, and Aidan started showing up with coffees labeled, for the heroine, in pen that made my hands forget themselves. Jonah and Aidan proofed articles at our table, their laughter sawed through the quiet like it was building something, and I kept pretending I didn't step closer to the doorway to listen. When Jonah left to fetch a flash drive, Aidan stayed, folding a dish towel with the care of a person trying not to drop anything fragile, which was everything. "You okay?" he asked, not as a courtesy but as a searchlight, and my throat did the thing a throat does when it recognizes water and danger in the same glass. "Busy," I said, which was true and completely wrong. Busy is the word you put over loneliness to make it palatable. He nodded like he'd been given coordinates. "You carry rooms on your back," he said softly, "and the rooms keep asking for more." And there it was, the first match scraped, the first oxygen. I started noticing the choreography of our house. How the foyer lamp made a small island. How the hallway mirror kept offering me back to myself with questions I didn't answer. How Evan's late nights collected like receipts for a purchase no one enjoyed. Aidan helped Jonah assemble a bookshelf one Saturday, and when a screw rolled toward me, I stepped on it by accident. Aidan's hand found my elbow and steadied me, and didn't hurry to leave, and I learned the precise weight of a touch that didn't ask for anything, but told me everything. "Careful," he said, and for the first time in a long time, I wanted to be taken care of without apologizing for needing it. It happened on a Thursday that felt like a spare key. Jonah at a late newsroom meeting, Evan called into a client dinner, the rain deciding to turn the street into a mirror. Aidan texted about dropping off Jonah's charger. I said we were out. The foyer lamp said otherwise. He stood in the doorway with that notebook tucked like a promise and said my name, Clara, not like a problem to solve, but like an answer he was brave enough to say out loud. "Leave it on the console," I told him, which sounded like permission to both of us, and he stepped inside the circle of light where I'd been orbiting for years. "You shouldn't be here," I said, even as the world narrowed to the place between his breath and mine, a distance measured in tremors. "I know," he said, not moving, eyes steady, and the knowing didn't stop anything. Sometimes naming a thing conjures it. When he kissed me, it wasn't a theft. It was a surrender I'd been rehearsing alone in the kitchen with a dish towel between my hands like a flag I couldn't raise or lower. The first sound I made belonged to the life I almost didn't get to have. The second belonged to the life I was breaking. The third belonged to a woman I barely recognized and wanted to know. We moved as if the house had been waiting for the cue. Rug to wall to guest room because I could not bear our bed, because a seam had to hold somewhere. After, his hand on my back felt like proof I still had a spine, and I hated that it took the wrong person to find it. "We can stop," he said into my hair, and I believed him, and I didn't, not at the same time. "We won't," I whispered, and the room recorded the confession the way drywall keeps a memory of every hole patched over. We learned the rhythms, dishwasher cycles masking voices, the precise half hour between Jonah's car door and his foot on the first stair, the way rain could be a witness and an accomplice. There was a note tucked into my recipe tin. Your lemon bars taste like an early June, ridiculous, devastating, a sweetness that made my mouth ache with guilt. I deleted threads, cleared call logs, replaced the second toothbrush in the guest bath because I was not stupid, only human, which is to say stupider than I ever meant to be. It was a laundry mishap that nearly cut us open. His gray hoodie slumped over the back of a breakfast chair like a person too tired to stay upright. Evan's voice was almost gentle when he asked, "New brand?" And I heard the fracture line snake under the tile. "Jonah's," I lied, and the lie fit but it itched. I wore it anyway. Aiden started being deliberate about invisible kindness, wiping the counter to erase prints, timing exits with the dryer buzzer, parking 2 houses down because love became logistics under pressure. And yet desire is sloppy. It wants to be seen. It leaves a glass by the sink, a whisper in the hallway, a shifted picture frame that says someone needed to steady themselves. "We have to stop," I said on a Tuesday when the jasmine outside the kitchen window insisted on perfuming the entire neighborhood with our crimes. "We can't," he answered, not defiant but honest, and honesty inside a lie is a blade you keep discovering in your pocket. "Then we have to choose what kind of pain we can live with," I said, and the silence that followed felt like a committee voting on my life. We didn't stop, not then. The choice made us instead, as choices do when you postpone them too long. It broke on a mild Sunday that had no business carrying a storm. Tomato sauce simmering, open windows, neighborhood kids arguing about a scooter at the curb. Jonah showered after a run. Evan stepped in from the hardware store early with a bag of nails. Aiden stood in the kitchen doorway with that careful way of holding himself, and every object in the room realized it was about to become evidence. "What's going on?" Evan asked, voice flat as a sheet of printer paper, and my lungs forgot the choreography they've practiced since birth. "Nothing," I said, and the syllables sounded like static over a fire alarm. He looked at the guest bath door, the dish towel folded too neatly, the hoodie that had made a second appearance because I am not as careful as the person I wanted to be. "Jonah," Evan called, and the floor measured the weight of our son's steps as if asking the house to brace for impact. "How long?" Evan asked me, not if, how long, which is the question grief asks when it has already decided what it is. "Weeks," I said, and the word toppled all the other furniture inside of me. Jonah's first sound didn't have language, his second did. "Aiden?" A name turned into a wound, and then the space where their friendship had been went quiet like a stage emptied too fast. Evan didn't shout. He sat and placed his palms on his thighs like he needed to remember which parts of himself were still attached. "You could have told me you were drowning," he said finally, like he meant to hand me a life ring, and discovered it was a mirror. "I did," I whispered, and I knew even as I said it that saying isn't the same as communicating, that doors can be technically unlocked and spiritually barred. Aiden left first, not with drama, but with an apology that had to pass through Jonah to reach me, and failed. The front door closed with the soft, decisive sound of a page turned, and a chapter ending in the middle of a sentence. The house rearranged itself. Evan moved into the guest room that had been complicit, and I stripped the bed until the mattress looked like atonement. Jonah found new routes through the house that didn't intersect with my cooking hours. He learned to make omelets badly at night and left the pan out like a signal. Not yet, but maybe. We tried therapy because language needed supervision, and we were two people who had outsourced our feelings to schedules and came back to find them feral. "In most ruptures, the affair isn't the fire, it's the flare," the counselor said, which sounded like a neat sentence until I tried to sleep inside it. Evan and I talked about the shape of neglect, the slow burn kind no smoke alarm catches, the love that calcified into roles and then into absence. None of it absolved me, some of it explained me. Explanation is not absolution, but it is an exit off the highway of shame. Summer pressed closer. I saw Aiden once across a coffee shop. He looked older in the way a face can hold a lesson it didn't ask for. We didn't speak. It felt like the only kind thing left. Jonah handed me his car keys one afternoon, and our fingers touched on purpose. We stood in a truce that wasn't a hug, and that counted. Evan started sitting at the kitchen island again, first with weather, then with a memory. "You cut your hair that year and cried in the driveway," and I laughed because I had, and he'd been there, and maybe he still was. I can't unknow it, he said one night in late August, pressing his hand over mine like someone anchoring a map, but I can choose what to do with what I know. And love, it turns out, is sometimes the quiet math of staying. Later, I turned off the foyer lamp and let the house be dark. The rooms were not empty, and the air finally felt like enough.